Hello world, welcome back to the Razor RC, and it's time to review the biggest RC car in my collection. This beast right here, the Arrma Outcast 8S EXB. Picked this up a few months ago. I think I got it about 3 months ago. Got released in, I think, July of 2021. So picked this up shortly thereafter. Have been driving it, tuning it, testing it, breaking it, repairing it, and of course sending it. It's finally time to share my thoughts on this RC car, and the way this review works is we rate it in 6 different categories as usual, from a rating from 1 to 5 stars. Now it is graded on a curve, so competitors to the Arrma Outcast 8S EXB are going to be things like the Traxxas X-Max, of course, which I also have, things like the Sun Reaper, maybe the Losi DBXLE 2.0, a little bit of a different type of vehicle, maybe the Arrma Kraton 8S as well. So we're actually going to be rating it as compared to those other vehicles. So this is graded on a curve, meaning 3 stars would get you kind of an average score, meaning it's about average in that category. 5 stars would be best in class, and 1 star would obviously be worst in class. So the 6 categories are going to be the build, how it came out of the box from the manufacturer, the design, basically the design of the layout, what they've actually put in the vehicle, performance, of course, how does it drive, how does it handle, how does it jump and land, durability, which is always important for a basher like this, support and maintenance is the 5th category, and finally the value. So the Arrma Outcast 8S EXB sells for $700 here in the United States. I will put a link in the description below if you want to pick one of these up. And yeah, let's go into the review. So popping off the body, this is a pretty heavy duty body. It's obviously got the roll cage. It does have these little support systems for the body pins. Fairly thick Lexan roof sliders on top. Really nice graphics in the traditional EXB black. Some little shiny graphics here showing you like EXB letters. Typical Outcast sort of styling. Kind of that retro mod look, and then underneath you can see some stickers to provide additional support, a little less scratching on the paint job, and then also kind of this brace that interlocks into the actual chassis brace here on the chassis. So pretty nice body overall. We'll pull this off to the side. Vehicle itself, obviously looks very similar to the 6S lineup, the 1/8 scale Outcast. It's very similar looking vehicle. It is a little bit different, but as you can see, a lot of aluminum bracing, one across the center that is interlocked into the center brace here. These diagonal ones that are aluminum here with plastic rod ends, kind of quick release system to get you to be able to remove those chassis braces as well. Now it does come as a roller. My particular system, I'm running a Hobbystar 5692, I think it's 1120 kV motor, running a Max 5 ESC. I did pull off the stock fan because I did find that broke a little too easily, so I'm running an Alza Racing adapter plate as well as an aluminum fan as well, and a little carbon fiber fan guard as there. The only aftermarket part I'm running is this Hot Racing servo saver. I did find that the plastic one kind of was a little weak, and I'll talk more about that. Servo wise, I am running a Primal RC. I think it's like a 73 kilogram centimeter servo. I was originally running a Savox servo, but I did find that did not perform very well. I think it was starting to go out, so I did switch over to the Primal RC servo. It seems to be working pretty well. Fairly inexpensive option if you're looking for that. And then in terms of the radio, I've got a DX5C radio and a DSMR. I think it's a SR315 receiver in the box. So that's what I got electronics wise. Nothing too crazy, kind of standard stuff. I am running a Max 5, which does fit, although there are no particular like screw holes to mount this, so I basically end up drilling my own screw holes and mounting it, as well as double side taping it. That seems to work pretty well, and then running IC5 connectors, basically because they're easy to solder. So that's what I got going on electronics wise. This does come as a roller, does come with the body as well as the tires, which are these basically these giant backflips tires. I don't know what the size is, but sort of the A scale size tires. So let's talk about the first category. All right, out of the box, the Outcast 8S EXB obviously comes as a roller, although you will have to assemble a few things. It does come with a couple different servo mounts depending on the size of the servo. I think the Arch Guard comes with the smaller size servo mount, but this one does come with a full size one as well. It does come with the plastic servo saver, which you will kind of have to assemble yourself. So a little bit of assembly required to kind of get this thing up and running. And then of course you will have to install the motor and ESC yourself. It does come with a couple different motor plates for different size can motors. I'm running the larger one because I'm running a 56mm wide can motor, basically like a Coke can size motor, fairly large motor, but it does fit nicely, no issues there. There is enough space to put this Max 5 on top of the basically the servo or receiver box. A little bit of pain to get to that receiver if you want to pull this thing off, because there are like 8 screws, and actually this ESC does cover one of the screws, so a little bit annoying, but yeah, it is accessible. Build wise, found no issues. I actually did tear down the diffs. No problems with the diffs having fluid. I think there's 20 million in the center diff. I think front and rear are 100K if I'm not mistaken. So no issues with the shocks, no issues with the screws. Assembly of that servo saver was fine, no real issues there. So overall the build was really good. Nothing I could really complain about. Nothing was stripped, no screws missing. So in the build category, I'm gonna give it 5 stars. A little bit of work, although the instructions are pretty clear on how to assemble the servo saver and mount your servo into the vehicle, so no issues there. So overall in the build category, I'm gonna give it 5 stars. I felt like it was actually a really easy build. A little bit more work than your typical roller, because you do have to assemble the sort of the electronics box here on the side, but other than that, yeah, no issues at all. 5 stars. Okay, design wise, obviously takes its heritage from the standard Outcast 6S EXB or regular 6S RTR. Does have some upgrades over the regular 8S RTR, basically with mainly the 7075 aluminum chassis. Some additional shocks are a little bit redesigned with thicker shock shafts. Does come with sway bars front and rear, which I actually removed the front sway bar just for some better handling. Thicker turnbuckles. I'm not sure what else there is. Additional motor plates, 4 different size cam motors in the servo box as well. So overall, yeah, fairly similar to the regular RTR, just kind of beefed up. Obviously, the EXB is their heavy duty version. They kind of learned what some of the weaknesses are with the regular RTR, put this thing together, added some additional durability, and so yeah, it is a pretty good design. Not a whole lot of adjustments, less than the 6S lineup. Really no different shock locations. I don't think there's different springs as well, or sway bars. So your setup is generally going to be kind of fixed. There are some minor things you can do with the diff fluids, shock fluids, sway bar mounts, with some minor adjustments like that, but for the most part it just kind of runs out of the box. Now this is obviously a heavy duty aluminum based design. Something like the X-Max is quite a bit lighter. I would guess like at least 5 pounds lighter than this. This is a fairly heavy vehicle. All that aluminum, all that metal, obviously it was introduced to make it durability, but it is at the cost of weight and also at a bit of expense as well. So this sells for $700 as a roller. Once you put everything together, you're going to be spending somewhere at least $1,100, I'd say, ready to run. Maybe a little bit more if you're running, kind of high performance ESCs and radios and stuff like that. But yeah, design wise, I think it's pretty good. Things are fairly easy to access. These bracing just have kind of quick release body clips that are tethered, so fairly easy to get to stuff. It kind of has that traditional A-scale layout with the aluminum chassis, drive shafts down the middle, motor on one side, ESC on the other. 2 different battery compartments. Obviously, you're going to be running this on at least 6S, so 2 3S batteries or 2 4S batteries if you want to run 8S. Is really nice. The battery components are adjustable, so for different length batteries. They also accommodate fairly large batteries as well, because they just kind of have standard battery straps. So yeah, overall I find this a fairly good design vehicle. The only trouble maintenance wise is probably going to be like your diffs. Those are fairly difficult to get at. I did actually have to replace one before. A bit of work, but that's fairly typical for this type of vehicle. So yeah, overall I think the design is pretty good. Obviously pivot ball suspension. I forgot what size hexes these are. I think 24mm hexes, not 100% sure. They do use 24mm hex wheel nuts. That is a little bit different than something like the X-Max, which uses 17mm hex nuts, so I had to pick up another 24mm socket wrench basically to get those off. But yeah, overall I think the design is pretty good. I'm going to give it 4 stars. Is it the best in class? I don't know. The only downside I would say to this is the weight. I do think that affects the durability a bit because the heavier the vehicle, obviously the more damage it's going to do when it lands, when it falls out of the sky from like 30 feet. A big old beast of a vehicle like this will take more damage than I think a lighter vehicle, as well as obviously being more expensive to replace parts, obviously being made out of metal rather than plastic. So in design category, I think it's pretty good. You know, it is better than some of the other designs out there. Certainly the EXB is beefed up from the regular RTR version, so I'm going to give it 4 stars, but I don't think it's best in class necessarily. Okay, the Outcast 8S EXB is a monster truck slash stunt truck, I guess you could call it. I'm not 100% sure this thing was meant for launching 30, 40 feet high in the air. I did test out the durability. I did test out the performance of this thing. It does handle rough terrain quite well. I think the shock suspension tuning is quite excellent. The diff tuning choices, you know, sort of diff fluid choices, I think is excellent. It drives quite well. Doesn't steer particularly well. I do think it is down from the X-Max in that regard. The X-Max actually does handle a little bit better, even though it's a high center of gravity monster truck, whereas this is really more of a large scale stunt truck. It does backflip quite well. I was able to send it a few times with some success, with some failures. But in the performance category, it's a little bit hard to tell exactly what this is meant for because, in my opinion, it's a bit too heavy to send up super high. I think it's kind of designed to be jumped about 10 to 15 feet high in the air. After that, things will break. Even if you land on all fours, obviously if you land poorly, you can completely stack this vehicle. I did break some things. So it's a stunt truck. You know, the Outcast is a stunt truck, but maybe the only real stunt truck in that 5th scale class. But I think it doesn't stunt all that well because I think it does too much damage to itself when you send it super high. So it actually drives pretty well on the ground. You know, it does have these long arm suspension travel. The tires are excellent. These Badlands tires actually provide excellent traction on the ground, on rough terrain, on dirt. From that perspective, I think it drives pretty well. But handling wise, it does steer rather poorly with the really wide track width. Doesn't steer particularly sharp corners, handles rough terrain, doesn't jump all that great. It actually jumps okay, but there's just too many limitations I feel with actually stunting this thing, and it does too much damage to itself as well that I feel like it doesn't actually make that great of a stunt truck. So in the performance category, I'm gonna give it 3 stars. I think it's average. I think it does some things reasonably well. You know, it drives over rough terrain pretty well, handles those big bumps, handles really poor traction as well. You know, really loose dirt. These tires actually dig in pretty well. You can stunt it. You can jump, you know, maybe 10, 15 feet high, do a backflip, but you're going to start breaking stuff after that point. So in the performance category, I'm going to give it 3 stars. I think it's kind of average. There's some things it does okay, some things it doesn't do all that great. The steering, the huge sends, I mean, none of them really survive all that well from the huge sends, but this, you can definitely cause a lot of damage to yourself. Even jumping it, let's say 20, I jumped it 30 feet high, landing on all fours, but I was just breaking stuff, even bending the chassis, even though I was landing it cleanly. So in the performance category, I'm gonna give it 3 stars. Is it the best stunt truck out there? I'm not sure it's that. Is it the best sort of carving, you know, sort of steering, best handling vehicle on the ground? I'm not sure it's really that. So kind of in the performance category, I'm gonna give it 3 stars. Kind of average. Nothing particularly good stands out in my opinion. So it's sort of an average score. Durability wise, the Outcast 8X EXB is obviously an upgrade version from the regular Outcast 8S RTR, or you know, kind of the Crane 8S RTR. I also own an X-Max 8S, as I mentioned. I've driven a Sen Reaper. I've not driven a Losi DBXLE 2.0. I'm not sure what else is out there sort of in this class of vehicle. But yeah, durability wise, I think it's fair. I do kind of cringe a little bit when I send this thing because It's got so many expensive parts, like the chassis alone I think is like $150 or so if you bend that, and I did have to replace the chassis when I stacked this once. I do break these rod ends somewhat frequently, even landing this thing. I think it's kind of limited to about 10 to 15 feet high. Once you go over 10 to 15 feet high, I've broken arms, even landing it clean, broken rod ends, even landing it clean. I've had a drive shaft pop out, even landing it clean. So it's kind of limited in the durability and how much you can send this thing. I certainly have caused, probably $150 worth of damage. I landed it once, probably jumping 30 feet high, messed up. I think it was a backflip, only got 3/4 of a flip. Ended up landing on the nose and completely stacking the whole front end of this thing, and having to change out the hinge pin braces. It is a little odd that B block has 2 aluminum pieces held in with 1 plastic piece, so I broke that, bent the chassis. This bumper is pretty much damaged, had to replace the diff case. I did not have to change out the shocks, so those have held up for me. But yeah, did $150 worth of damage. I think I bent 2 or 3 of these braces, obviously broke some rod ends. Yeah, overall, just a ton of damage. Obviously landing it poorly. Now, if you land it clean, like I said, I think if you keep it 10 feet or lower, it will survive. It's not going to break, in my opinion, on just simple rollovers and stuff like that. But jumping this, it is extremely heavy and will do a lot of damage to itself if you land it poorly. I also did break one of these rod ends in the rear, so fair amount of damage. Now the question is that a lot of damage, or does that mean it's not durable? And again, everything's rated on a curve. You're going to have to compare it to other vehicles. So I think it is more durable than the regular Outcast 8S. I do think it's more durable than the regular Creighton 8S. I don't have a Creighton 8S EXB, but in my opinion, in my experience, the Outcasts tend to be a little bit more durable than the Creightons because the shorter wheelbase, a little bit less weight, a little less leverage on things when you land. Because it's the shorter chassis, a little bit lighter, a little bit smaller. So in my opinion, the Outcasts tend to be a little bit more durable than the Creightons, but I don't think it's more durable than the X-Max, for example. The Sen Reaper also is reasonably durable. You can break the bumpers and stuff, but for the most part, that's actually not that bad either. So in the durability category, I'm actually going to give it a fair score. I'm going to give it 3 stars. I think there are weaker vehicles out there, like the non-EXB versions. I also think there are more durable vehicles than this, like the Traxxas X-Max. I do think that is more durable overall. So in the durability category, I think they made some nice upgrades. This have reasonable durability, but I wouldn't say it's really best in class or necessarily even above average. So in the durability category, I'm gonna give it 3 stars, kind of an average rating. Arrma is owned by Horizon Hobby, one of the largest RC companies in the world, if not the largest. I think Traxxas might be close. Maybe Traxxas is bigger, but a reasonably well-supported company. For the most part, you can find parts. In these times, it can be a little bit difficult to get parts, obviously due to supply chain issues. But overall, I think the support and maintenance on this is above average compared to something like a Sen Reaper. I think it's going to be easier to get parts, a little bit easier to tear down. Compared to the X-Max, I also think it's easier to work on. The X-Max kind of comes apart really weird. I'm always referring to the manual when I'm taking apart my X-Max, but this is fairly straightforward. If you worked on any of the other Arrmas or even most 8th scale vehicles, it kind of comes apart the same way. And then part support, again, like I said, is a little bit easier to get. Most hobby shops are going to carry Horizon Hobby products, almost all of them, honestly. They may even carry Outcast parts for the 5th scale stuff. Some do, some don't. Obviously a little less popular than the 8th scale stuff. But yeah, in the support and maintenance category, I think this is an above average vehicle. I'm going to give it 4 stars. One of the stronger points of owning an Arrma is that it is easier to get parts, easier to get support. You can definitely contact Horizon Hobby. They have a really generous warranty on this as well. So Horizon Hobby and owning Arrma is a little bit of a better experience than some of the other brands. So in support and maintenance, we're going to give it 4 stars. And the last category is value. The Arrma Outcast 8S EXB sells for $700 here in the United States. I think that's fair. Honestly, there is a lot of value in the vehicle, and my definition of value is probably a little different than most people. I actually talked about what you pay for in terms of what you get in the box, in terms of the quality of the materials, the amount of aluminum, carbon fiber, sort of exotic titanium type pieces. It's not so much comparing the value or as compared to like the performance and durability or whatever. It really is purely on its own merits. If you ship me a gold bar in a box, the durability, performance, everything would be horrible on the thing, but I give it a really high value because what you get in the box is worth a lot in terms of cost. And so when you're paying $700 for a gold bar, that's obviously going to rate super high, even though it does everything horribly. So in the same way, I'm going to give this actually 4 stars in the value category. I think there's a lot of quality in this vehicle. Heavy duty shocks, all aluminum shock bodies, heavy duty CVAs all the way around, heavy duty turnbuckles, all this nice aluminum bracing, 75 chassis. This vehicle is just tons and tons of quality. It's probably one of the most expensive 5th scale vehicles to manufacture, and I think the price is actually reasonable. It's still actually less than an X-Max, which is obviously $1,000. Once you add in maybe $500 worth of parts, yes, it's going to cost more than an X-Max, but it's going to be a much higher quality vehicle. Now, that doesn't mean it's more durable than X-Max. It doesn't mean it's faster than X-Max. It just means what you paid for in this box, you see where that value went. You see where that money went. When you look at an X-Max and you spent $1,000 on one, and you see it's made, almost completely made out of plastic, including like the ESC and everything, looks, kind of cheap. You kind of wonder, where did all that money go? And obviously it went to Traxxas's, bank account, right? The cost of making an X-Max is not much higher than this. It's actually it should be quite a bit lower than this, yet the price is somewhat comparable. So in the value category, I think it's pretty good value, 4 stars overall. Now the RTR version, I forget if it's 900 or they moved it up to 1,000 now, but it does come with all electronics. Obviously you'll be able to run it out of the box, including the radio. So it is a little bit pricey, but I think there is a lot of premium in this vehicle. They didn't raise the price when they jacked up the prices on the rest of the Arrma lineup, so that was nice to see that this is still the same value it was back in July, even though everything else has increased in price. So in value, I think it's again one of the stronger points of this vehicle. $700, is obviously a lot of money, but considering what you get out of the box, I think it's actually pretty good. So my final thoughts on the Arrma Outcast 8S EXB. It is a beast of a vehicle, no doubt. It looks like a beast. It drives like a beast. It weighs like a beast. It turns like a beast. It is a monster of a vehicle, but I wouldn't say it's the best Arrma in the lineup. Me personally, I kind of like driving my 6S a little bit better, the 8th scale Arrma. It's just a little more durable. I feel like this has more limitations on how high you can send it. Now, obviously, it's more capable of rougher terrain. You need a little bit bigger wide open spaces for this thing, whereas a 6S, you're kind of limited in where you can run it, because if it gets too rough, if the ground is too uneven, you can't really drive those smaller 8 scale things. So it is a little bit more capable from that perspective, but I kind of feel like this has a lot of limitations in terms of how high you can send it. The durability, I think, is not best in class. It's a stunt truck, but really you're kind of limited to what you can, how high you can send it, what kind of tricks you can do with it. So to me, it handles and drives a little bit better as a low altitude type vehicle, jumping it 10 feet high in the air at most, doing single backflips at most. Beyond that, things will break and it'll be very, very expensive to replace parts. I do like this vehicle. It certainly is one of the ones to consider if you're looking at a large scale vehicle. I think it's a little more capable than the DBXLE 2.0, which is, obviously much more of a ground-based type vehicle. The X-Max is a little bit more of a do-everything type vehicle, but it does handle better than this. So from that perspective, performance, it's not class-leading. Durability, it's not class-leading. You're really looking at more things like value, support, and maintenance, maybe the design where it's pretty good. So you kind of have to take that all into account, I think. So Arrma Outcast 8S EXB, there are not a lot of choices in the 5th scale, especially if you're looking at a stunt truck. I think this is still one of the ones to consider. Really, this or the X-Max is what you're going to want to look at if you want basically like a monster truck type, stunt truck type vehicle. But be aware of the limitations. This is not something you want to send 20, 30 feet in there, not unless you completely M2C out this whole vehicle. Even then, I'm not sure it's really going to hold up if you land it bad. So anyways, that are my thoughts on the Arrma Outcast 8S EXB. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons. Look for more videos soon. Thanks for watching.